This is my top 10 most overrated college football teams. Now, it says top 10, but this isn't really in order. I'll be stronger about certain teams than other ones. But yeah, let's just get into it. Number 10, I have Syracuse. Syracuse is not a top 25 team in my opinion. I have a feeling they're going to be like 4 or 5 losses by the end of the season, maybe even 3. But the reasoning behind this is because of the Clemson game and then because of the Notre Dame game. The Clemson game, you can't lose. Even though it's on the road, you can't lose with 4 turnovers. And to be frank, they looked terrible in that game. One of their 21 points was a scoop and score. 14 points was scored by the offense, and they had 4 givens to the offense. Well, 3 givens to the offense because one of them was taken to the house. And then in the Notre Dame game, they didn't look any better. Syracuse, in my opinion, is a shitty team. Not terrible, but they're pretty bad. I just don't think they're enough to be in the top 25 still, especially after getting beaten so bad by Notre Dame after the weekend. I was going to say something else. Damn. All right, I guess I'll just move to the next one. Number 9 is LSU. Don't get me wrong, I think LSU's a good team. And I think they're a top 25 team. But I don't think they should be in the top 10. Now, that is the college football playoff rankings, like the chance of getting into it. The actual ranking, I think they're 15, and I still think that's too high. I think they should be like number 20 or something like that. Somewhere around there would be a good spot, maybe like 18 or 17. But number 10, place at number 10 for the college football, and then place at number 15. We got to remember, they got killed by Tennessee at home. Like, that's a really, really yucky game to have on your schedule or on your resume. And to be honest, I think they're so overrated right now just because the ESPN's putting them up there for Alabama. That's the only reason they're doing it, to make Alabama's resume look better. They're going on the road to play at LSU, and if they win that game in a domination, in an annihilation, they're going to get praise. They might even move up to number 4. And that's the whole reason why I think LSU's even up this high, is because of Alabama. Number 8 is NC State. This team started off the year at like number 7, number 10, or number 7, something like that. And they've gone downhill since then, and they look terrible. They barely escaped against Virginia Tech. They look like a pile of shit in that game. They lost to Clemson, 10-point game. Well, yeah, that doesn't look too bad, but if we really look at it, they actually were a lot closer. Or, I'm sorry, a lot further. Opposite. They barely beat Virginia Tech by 1 point. Then Syracuse beat the shit out of them, 24-9. And then they came back and beat Florida State after being down 17-0, but that game was at home. They lost on the road to Clemson, 30-20. But the score with 3 minutes left, the score with 53 seconds left in the game was 13-30, and then they scored a touchdown to make it 20-30. They beat Texas Tech, not a very impressive win, and they won by 1 point to East Carolina as well, at East Carolina. They're going to play Wake Forest this weekend, and I think Wake Forest is going to beat them. Just because I think NC State's like hella overrated right now. I don't even think they should be near the top 25. Yeah, they've really disappointed this year. Number 7, Texas. 2 reasons why I have this team up here. One is because Texas had that 1-point loss against Alabama, so they're making Texas look like a top 25 team to make Alabama's record look better, to make their resume look better. And for some goddamn ordinary reason, they are favored against Kansas State. Now, maybe ESPN knows something we don't. Maybe there's injuries or something like that. I don't know. But all I know is Kansas State at home just killed Oklahoma State 48-0. And Oklahoma State beat Texas like using critical thinking, putting my brain cells to work. I'm going to say that Kansas State's going to win this game. If Kansas State loses this game and Texas wins, well, it's a sure fact that Texas is going to move way up in the rankings. I would almost say probably top 15 just to make Alabama look better and to make Kansas State look worse. Because that's all they care about right now is just making the good teams look good and making the bad teams look bad. So also another reason why LSU is up there, because LSU's name is LSU's name. So you got to put them in the top 10. You got to make them look better than everybody else. But Texas, for some reason, they keep getting favored in these games. Like when I saw that Texas was favored against Oklahoma State, I immediately put my money on Oklahoma State. And sure enough, Oklahoma State won. Because I knew Texas wasn't going to be able to win that game. And for some reason, they're favored here again. Number 6 is USC. USC's one loss, and they lost at the last second to a 2-point conversion, a touchdown and a 2-point conversion to give Utah a 1-point lead over them. Hand them their first loss, which it was a great game between both. But here is where I see USC being a little overrated, is their defense. First off, Utah had 1 turnover. USC had none. So that's already a given to USC. That's already a given for some easy points. And but that's one game. Now let's talk about the USC at Arizona game where they barely get out of there by 8 points, 45-37. U of A's all about their offense and they have no fucking defense whatsoever. But guess what USC doesn't have? A defense. Basically, all USC has done all year except for one game they have played let's outscore everybody. 41-28 against Stanford. 42-25 against ASU. 30-14 against Washington State. They didn't prosper against Utah. 45-37 at Arizona. They just played let's outscore everybody. The one game, I guess you could also say the Washington State game, their defense did good, but I think that one was more Washington State's offense being terrible. But there is one game in which their defense looked good, and that was the Oregon State game. That game looked good. Their offense looked terrible. Oregon State had 4 turnovers in that game, one of them being a game loser. But USC was only able to score 17 points. Their defense was able to fend off Oregon State in this game, and that is the only game their defense has taken the spotlight as I drop my phone. That's their only game, and that's why I think USC is going to be overrated. USC is most likely going to get a nice bowl game this year, and hopefully they go up against a team with a really good offense and a good defense, because if they go up against a team with a good defense, I just don't think they can win. I just think they're going to get put on their face. Number 5 is the Rebels. The Rebels just got beaten the poopers out of by LSU after leading the whole time, and yet they are number 11. That is literally SEC bias. If it had to be put into like a picture, like I don't even know, that wasn't even a good I don't know. But I think they should be way down, like way down. They should not be number 11. Right now in the AP top 25, they're still 11. What? They beat Texas A&M. That's all they did. Texas A&M is not good. And I guarantee you, the reason that they are up at number 11 is because LSU beat the shit out of them. So it makes LSU look better. LSU at number 10, but the Rebels are at number 11 with LSU being their only loss. Alabama beats the shit out of them. It's like everything ties back to Alabama. Everything ties back to Alabama being better. That's what the SEC or the ESPN's plan is to make Alabama look better. I almost put Alabama on this list, except it is really hard because I do think Alabama is well placed. I think TCU should be ahead of them just because of their record, but I definitely do think Alabama is a very good team. They looked, in that Tennessee game, Tennessee's undefeated right now, ranked number 3 in the AP, ranked number 1 in the college football playoff rankings. And they beat Alabama. That's their only loss, and Alabama lost because they missed a field goal. And I think Alabama's a good team, but what I just despise is that they're going out of their way to put Alabama ahead of these teams. They I'm surprised they didn't put Alabama against Michigan, probably just because Michigan is Michigan. But Texas Christian University, TCU, has nowhere near as big of a name as Michigan or as Clemson or as Alabama. And the ESPN's doing everything they can to put Alabama higher. That's all it is. Number 4, I have Washington. See, like, this is why I said at the start it's not in order. I think Washington's overrated right now because they're favored at the Oregon State game at home, and they're a 2-loss team. But I feel like they get praise because I feel like they get praised and they're regarded overall as a good team right now when they really shouldn't be. First off, let's talk about their close games. They beat number 11 Michigan State at Washington, which looked like a good win, 39-28. An 11-point win over a terrible team now that we know. But at the time, that looked good. They beat Stanford 22-40. That looks like a pretty shitty game, allowing Stanford to drop 22 points on you. I think Stanford's better than their record, but that's just me. Then they lose at UCLA when UCLA wasn't even ranked. And the final score was 32-40, but they scored 8 points to make it an 8-point game with 4 minutes left. Then ASU beats them at ASU, to be fair, but ASU, like, we're regarded as a bad team, but we still beat them, like, and we're still regarded as a bad team. So it's like, okay, then that would mean that Washington's a bad team. And then Washington beats Cal by 7 points, 28-21 at Cal. Their only 2 losses come from the number 12 team in the country right now and ASU. That's their only 2 losses. And I feel like they should hold on to more losses. They are not what their record says. They should be more like 3-4. Their non-conference carried them hard. Kent State wasn't a very good opponent. Portland State was definitely not a good opponent. And from what we know now, Michigan State was a terrible opponent. That gave them such a boost. That game gave them such a boost this year. And I think Oregon State's going to put Washington in their place. And yeah, that's what I think about Washington. Now, let's be real, though. I don't think they're a terrible team. I just think they're overrated. I feel like at the end of the season, they could maybe sneak their way into the top 25, but I just don't see them right now as how highly regarded they are in people's minds. Number 3, Oklahoma State. I am saying this just because of the fact that they're still in the top 25. Now, I don't blame them for keeping them in the top 25. They were the number 9 team, but I feel like dropping them down to number 18 was like way too nice. I feel like they should be number 25, barely hanging on to the top 25 after that game, because let's be real. Like, a lot of other teams take a 48-0 loss to a ranked team like that, they would drop off. For instance, LSU dropped off. LSU was a 1-loss team climbing the rankings, got killed by Tennessee, and they dropped off. But now they're number 10. It's like, so why is Oklahoma State now? Like, I get it, LSU was number 25 at the time, but, you know, okay, well, I guess, yeah, number 25, you can't keep them in the top 25. Yes, that makes more sense. But I feel like Oklahoma State going from number 9, getting killed on the road 48-0. Like, 48-0 is a lot of points. There's no coming back from that. That's too much. I think Oklahoma State should have at least dropped at ranked 22 or under. I feel like they were just given this maybe even to make Texas look better or something like that. I don't know. I feel like they were treated way too nicely and they're a little overrated. Number 2 is Michigan. I have Michigan here, which might piss some people off. I know my whole whopping 2 viewers. I have Michigan here just because they haven't really played anybody. They played Penn State and killed them 41-17. But that game was at Michigan, and Penn State led at halftime. Penn State's not going to win a game, even if they're the best team in the country, ranked number 1 at the time. I just think Penn State's not going to win a game at Michigan. It's a rivalry game, and Michigan is a hard environment to play in. And to be frank, I think that Ohio State will beat Michigan pretty good. I think Michigan is definitely a good team. I think they're definitely a top 10 team, but I'm just giving them a little bit of an overrated remark because I feel like people treat them so highly, and what people are saying is like Michigan should be in the top 4 instead of Clemson, which I agree with, but I also don't agree with. I don't think either team should be in the top 4. I think TCU should, but that would never happen until the end of the season if TCU remains undefeated. Like Michigan barely beat Maryland at Michigan by 7 points. They won 27-14 at Iowa. That's a difficult place to play at, but Iowa's a really bad football team. Indiana at halftime at Indiana, the score was 10-10. Indiana just shut down, and the final score was 31-10. Really spread apart scores, but Indiana wasn't able to do anything. Then they went and killed Penn State. Then they went and killed their rival. Now they're on the road at Rutgers. That's going to be an easy game. Then they go home to play Nebraska, and then they're home to play Illinois. And do not get me wrong, I don't think Illinois is going to win that game, but I think Illinois will stand a chance. The Wolverines game against a ranked opponent is just too hard for the ranked opponent to play against. That's the reason why Michigan has such a high record, I think. And number 1, we have Clemson. Speak of the devil. The two most teams that I think are I don't think Michigan's that overrated. I do think they're good, but I think Clemson fits the number 1 category perfectly for me. Even though this isn't in number order from most overrated to least overrated, I think that Clemson is the most overrated team in the league right now. I think the whole ACC is overrated right now. Think about it. Wake Forest is number 22 right now. They tanked from number 10 to number 22 after their loss against Louisville. 8 turnovers, and yeah, Clemson barely escaped in overtime at Wake Forest, but you're the number 5 team. Wake Forest is the number 22 team right now. Like, okay, Clemson, you can't barely sneak by. They barely beat Syracuse. They escaped Syracuse with I think the final score was 27-21, and they had 4 turnovers. They won this game solely off of Syracuse being dog shit. That's the only reason. I think this week, Clemson is going to be upset by Notre Dame. And Notre Dame will get their name out there, maybe even enter the top 25. And I just think Clemson is being ranked so highly because they're undefeated. Their name is Clemson, and the ACC is hella overrated. Like, I think every team in the ACC, the ACC is the worst Power 5 conference right now. I think it goes SEC, Big 10, Big 12, Pac-12, ACC. Maybe even flip the Pac-12 and the Big 12. That could be determined, but that's different. I think that Clemson is extraordinarily overrated, and I just pray that there's a game that exposes them and that they don't make it to the college football playoffs. Because if they make it to the college football playoffs, they're going to get laid on their back and fucked by a 300-pound horse. And that'll be a terrible game and a waste of a playoff spot. I'm like, because what's going to happen is that there's going to be an SEC team and there's going to be a Big 10 team. I'm going to say that the SEC team will most likely be maybe Alabama. And the most likely Big 10 team is going to be Ohio State. Then there's Clemson that gets in there. Then maybe TCU. But if Alabama gets in, the reason I say Alabama is because I feel like Georgia is going to beat Tennessee, even though I don't have them winning Tennessee in my predictions video. I have them. I'm kind of worried, and I think now Georgia might beat Tennessee. And If Tennessee loses to Georgia, Georgia goes undefeated, which they can do easily. That Georgia's going to enter the SEC championship, meaning Tennessee can win out the rest of their schedule and be placed at number 5 with one loss to Georgia. Then Alabama and Georgia play in the SEC championship. Alabama beats Georgia. Alabama goes in. Georgia's going to drop out, and Tennessee's going to get in because Tennessee is just sitting there, and they beat Alabama. So that's just how it works. So maybe there will be 2 SEC teams if that's the case with Alabama. If Georgia wins, I think then I'm getting distracted. What I'm saying is I hope Clemson just I hope they don't eat a spot for the college football playoff. That's all I hope, because I know they're overrated. I know it. They're so overrated. I just wish they would have lost to Syracuse. I wish Syracuse would have pulled it off. But they didn't. I think Notre Dame will pull it off this week. Give them a little reality check and hopefully knock them out of the college football playoff. But that is my top 10 most overrated college football teams.